Things in this first episode pick up back at Lumon, and from the initial dialogue and screams, this appears to be the first time Mark has returned to Lumon after the big macro data uprising that we'll get into a little bit later. If you remember, Mark and the others had some time as their innies in the outie world, discovering things may not fully appear as truth. One of which is Mark discovering his wife Gemma, aka Miss Casey, is still alive as he frantically runs down the maze of Lumon hallways like a rat in a maze. Now while doing this, Mark is accompanied by Les McCain's Burning Coal, some defiant jazz if I've ever heard some, as he arrives to Wellness where Miss Casey resides.
And it's gone.
Yeah, Lumon straight up erased Wellness as we can see a mysterious figure creeping on Mark. At this point, it's complete speculation, but my two guesses are that this is either PD, somehow like the whole Ms. Casey scenario, or a copy of Mark. Again, logistically, the evidence to back this up is lacking right now, aside from the Season 1 intro. Mr. Milkshake ushers Mark back into his new office, having taken over the role of Miss Cobell. And there's a few things of note here. First is, obviously a child, Ms. Hong, having taken over from Milchick's position. Through her interactions with the MDR team and robotically playing some random computer game that feels like it should be in the Stanley Parable, I have a feeling that there's definitely more to her, and she might be some sort of android with a memory chip implanted. This theory takes a huge leap from what we've come to, know in this Severance world, but in Milchick's office, there's a large crate, and she could have arrived in it, and also it's her first day as the deputy director. She's without emotion, something that I'll get into a little bit later, and claims that she was a crossing guard before, despite her portraying someone that's definitely in their teens. If this is the case, Milchick could fall into the same boat, because does he have a life outside of Lumon? These are the questions! Milchick continues, claiming that it's been 5 months since their innies made this huge splash in the realm of Severance reform on the outside world. I'm convinced that this is absolutely not true at all. It's all a lie. It's Lumon, for God's sake, because if we take a closer look at the Kier Chronicle, that's our first big red flag. While the photo of the group is a silly Photoshop of the group MDR photo from Season 1 plopped into a real 1960s ticker tag parade photo featuring President Dwight D. Eisenhower visiting Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. A subtle nod to 1985's Brazil, something creator Dan Erickson has mentioned provided inspiration for this series. Continuing on, there's a story of a thief in Bard Creek, where Mark lives, assuming that this is a way to maybe cover up Miss Selvig and other Lumon managers casually entering severed employees' homes while they're at work. And lastly, there's a mention of Rickon Hale and his novel, The UUR. Now, initially viewers may jump to this assuming that Rickon is a sleeper Lumon agent, but rather I think this is Lumon's attempt at merging the outside, quote, religion into the already existing world of Kier and Lumon. It's already a clashing ideology from Season 1, so I could see them manipulating things and weaving his, quote, knowledge into the severed floor, much like the New Testament versus the Old Testament. Let's get into the new MDR replacements, because that is exactly what they are. Mark W., Gwendolyn Y., and Dario R. Now, through conversations, we learn that Mark and Gwen work together at Lumon Branch 5X. We later learn that there's Lumon branches all over the world, with this home branch in this series being 501, so 5X is probably a failed MDR branch, because Mark W. does mention that they never hit quota once. No doubt this is the B squad, while they are called up as, replacements, or if they're permanently severed living on the severed floor, that is all up for debate. But Dario R. is the outlier here. We know he's Italian, later mentioning that he worked in a branch where the Egan's perpetuity wing were brooms with plates on their faces, elevators were ropes, and he has a similar Allentown desk tchotchke labeled Grimaldi, a town in Italy, however, it's made of wood. This mofo is old. I'm convinced he's been at Lumon for years, decades, maybe even centuries, because of these subtle details. But the real key evidence is the new employee work badges compared to the original MDR team. A recent Lumon Industries LinkedIn post showed that these new employee ID badges and Dario's employee number is significantly lower than everyone else. We know Irving has been at Lumon for 9 years, and his number isn't even close to Dario's. Also, none of them have severed access on their badges, so this could be another clue that the whole thing is an act and Mark's original team was meant to come back. It's just an illusion of freedom. A few other small office details are that they all mentioned they arrived an hour before Mark, meaning 8 instead of 9. So again, was this all done as, a rehearsal before Mark S. showed up to work? Gwen has a profile silhouette perk rather than a caricature showing that maybe different branches have different kind of perks. The supply closet has shrunk, meaning that there's no privacy despite Mr. Milkshake's mentions later in the new and improved break room. And why is there a full jar of vending machine tokens compared to the only take 2 from season 1? Initially my thought was, oh snap, this is an entirely different Lumon branch and building, but that is a lot for an episode 1 reveal. I think it more ties in with the new and improved break room and what I think this season is all going to be about: finding happiness. Before we get the band together, Mark frantically runs to Milchick's office, talking with the board, which I'm convinced is entirely digital because the speaker is literally a plug and play. No dialing, no waiting. The board is there and ready to listen. So this is further evidence to the theory that the previous CEOs are somehow uploading their consciousness into a digital form to live forever, something that real-life billionaires are attempting to do, using the upcoming CEO as a physical body to wander this world. I looked at the lifespans of the Lumon CEOs, and part of this is a race against the clock, because if revolving is in fact previous CEOs being uploaded into the current CEO, something is going horribly wrong, because they are, quote, dying sooner and sooner, which may be why MDR is under close eye for quarterly quota. There's also a quick look at the drawer featuring a tube of paste and a brush, and don't worry, this is nothing, it's just a bonsai tree trimming kit. But if there are shears and or a knife, this could tie back to something way down the line in this season. After Mark comes back from his weird departure, which, by the way, his Audi had to have known that he left work or was kicked out of work at 9:15, right? Anyway, there's a new painting called Kier Pardons His Betrayers. Now, I am the furthest from an art interpreter, so here we go. Kier, the head of the Blue Lumon workforce, is trying to allow the shadowy industry complex of Lumon to spread in the world, darkness covering light, whereas the macro data team is being cut down for their atrocious actions. However, they are bathed in red light, a color that has been used time and time again in this show to show the contrast of innie and outie, whereas the outie caused this shakeup, but in the real, quote, red world. Potentially, the creators took inspiration from various paintings from Aaron Douglas, an African-American painter, illustrator, and visual arts educator. He was a major figure in the 1920s Harlem Renaissance, standing up against racism and white supremacy. Anyone who actually knows art, please let me know if I am on the right path with this one. Let's head over to the new and improved break room, which is such a stark difference from the dim and scary version that was in Season 1. First, with the chairs being purple, a color rarely used in Season 1. I believe that this is the start of having their innie and outies blending into one. Quick reminder, outie or real life has been associated with red or warmer colors, whereas Lumon is blue and colder with the muted colors. It's a different take on the break room, but more than likely it has the same nefarious purposes. Now my guess as why the switch up to a, quote, more joyous approach is that Lumon's severance chip or MDR research is severely lacking happiness, aka frolic, which is associated with the yellow color. Motivational posters around the room allude to this, however, it is missing from the projector lights. Yes, red, blue, green are the primary colors of light, but also are associated with 3 of the 4 tempers: woe, malice, and dread. I'm curious if this last season was all about malice or dread, whereas Season 2 is going to be the search for happiness. They need to better equip their employees with fun new perks, no more listening and watching, and unlimited snacks from the vending machine. I mean, the building in that short film does ask what makes a building truly happy. And if the theory that James Egan has all of the CEOs living in his brain, the dude is severely lacking happiness from what we've seen. Not to mention Miss Casey from season 1 didn't express happiness, and Miss Hong's little bubble game is missing yellow or frolic, despite her giving a small smile when the hoop lands on what I assume is a tiny little model of Kier Egan. The idea of happiness bleeds over to Dylan later on when Mr. Milkshake secretly takes him to the new family visitation wing, or at least shows him the blueprints of it that he's working on. And much like everything Lumon is doing, this is a straight up lie. The most chilling moment is when he says, yeah, if you take it at face value. Like, dude, what? What do you mean?
Are you saying I could see my family here?
If you take the name of the room at face value, I'd say yes.
Unfortunately, I think Dylan is now at a war with himself, and this is Lumon's attempt to get his innie to choose to be at Lumon forever. Now, whether or not this happens and whether or not he actually has a family, and if that family shows up, is it his real family? We gotta wait for this, but it is an interesting concept in the upcoming season. I gotta mention parts of the Lumon video in the break room though, like the fact that Lumon has been listening and recording to everything the severed employees have been saying and doing, and that Irving's flamehead is no doubt a reference to the fire miser from 1974's A Year Without Christmas, dance moves and all. There may be something with Lumon's obsession with older tech, with this movie being from the 70s, but we will have to wait and see. Now, Mark came back to search for his wife, which I love. I absolutely love that he's doing this, but I don't like that Helly is lying to her coworkers. I have a feeling that her innie is scared, maybe was threatened by her outie, so she's playing coy to the group, even though Irving instantly caught on with the night gardener question. I'm really hoping that Irving has more of an aggressive turn this season, potentially giving more insight into what his outie has been doing with all of the severed employee documents and research. I would love some like undercover spy shit with him slowly leaking into Lumon. I do have a theory that the reason he saw all of the black goo in season 1 and is continuously painting the testing room elevator is because he is purposely keeping himself sleep deprived. I mentioned this in a video on my short form and clips YouTube channel, pointing to the fact that his outie is constantly drinking coffee and his innie had gotten in trouble for dozing off a few times. In this case, it's how our brains function while sleeping, allowing the subconscious to work on its own. Lumon does not want this and is probably a current flaw in the Severance chips. Things wrap up with the Allergies' God Walked Down song setting an upbeat tone as the MDR team gets back to work, learning that Mark is now working on a file called Cold Harbor that instantly transitions into a vitals screen of Miss Casey. Like, what? Everyone's theory about him mapping her brain seems to be the right path, and would explain his, quote, freshman fluke when he initially started at Lumon. Now, if you don't remember or didn't know this Allentown freshman fluke was Mark finishing his first file 100% and faster than any previous MDR refiner ever before, causing Lumon to completely reverse engineer the MDR process. I think it's because his sadness was so strong from Gemma's death that he was able to smash the woe temper like it was nothing. So clearly, this is what Mark is doing, but the others is still up for debate and theories and interpretation. Like, I don't know, maybe the other three are doing nothing. However, is Miss Casey a clone, or was her body donated to science is still up for grabs? Because in episode 6 of season 1, I believe when Mark is on a date with Alexa, he does say that Gemma always had a plan B, so maybe. Another detail is Mark used to be a history teacher, and Allentown being a prominent location during the American Revolution, he would definitely have knowledge on this. This same idea is translated to Cold Harbor, being the Battle of Cold Harbor that took place in the American Civil War. There's obviously a connection here. It's muddy, it's a little confusing, so if anyone has a really good theory, I'm all ears. Lastly, we can catch a glimpse of Helly's file names as they scroll by. Sunset Park, a file mentioned by Petey in season 1, Sienna, the file that Helly completed, but the one that really stood out to me is Santa Mira or Santa Mira, the fictionalized town in 1956's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is a massive clue in my opinion, and really falls in line with what Severance is and what we collectively believe Lumon is trying to do. Spread the teachings of Kier by taking over and controlling their workers' bodies and potentially the entire world, hinted at by James Egan in Season 1's finale. Great details. I absolutely loved this first episode to kick things off for Season 2. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this episode, what theories or details did you pick up on, and feel free to follow and subscribe for weekly breakdowns and theory videos just like this, along with short-form breakdowns or breakouts over on my JBuck Extra channel. I had to rush this edit because of personal life stuff, so big thank you to everyone who made it this far, who liked this, who commented, everything like that. I'm going to be covering all of Season 2 just like that, so yeah, stick around. You're all the bestest, and I will see you next week.